Welcome, 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 everyone, to another Sunday of When Black Women Gather. I'm happy to say that on this Sunday, we have the pleasure of having as our special guest Miss Edwidge Danticat. And she is an esteemed author, and we're going to talk to her about her work and her journeys, getting, to her esteemed place in life, and we'll be inspired by her. And my co-hosts today are Narline Casimir-Simpson. Hey, Narline.
Hello. Hi.
And everybody knows Dr. Cleo Manago. Hey, Cleo.
Hello, hello. It's nice to meet everyone, and it's my esteemed pleasure to be in the presence of Edwidge Danticat.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Awesome.
let me very quickly just tell you a little bit about our guest. Um, she is a Haitian American novelist and short story writer. She was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Haiti is the correct way to say that, I've been told. At 12, she joined her parents in New York City, where she graduated from Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn. And then she went on to Barnard College also in New York, and she graduated Phi Beta Kappa. Initially, she intended to become a nurse, but as storytelling and letter writing were constants in her youth, her love of writing won out, and she received a BA in French literature. She began writing at the age of 9. She went on to get a master's in fine arts and creative writing from Brown University in 1993. Her first novel, Breath, Eyes, Memory, was published in 94 at the age of 25, and it went on to become an Oprah book club selection. That book explores the um, relationship between women and the nationalist agenda of the state during the Duvalier regime and sanctioned violations of the female body. Her latest work, which I'm very happy to say I've gotten to read most of it, I'm really enjoying it, is called We're Alone, and it is a collection of essays that combines personal stories with global themes, exploring environmental catastrophes, the traumas of colonialism, motherhood, and the complexities of resilience. She has gone on to write and edit several books and has been the recipient of many awards and honors. Her work focuses on the lives of women and their relationships, issues of power and justice and poverty. Her literary inspirations include Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Sonia Sanchez, Paule Marshall, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and she has received countless awards for her writings, which include short stories, novels, children's books, nonfiction, films, translations. Currently, she is a professor in the Department of African American and African Diaspora Studies at Columbia, and her work focuses on the lives of children. I already said that, sorry. She is the mother she's married and the mother of two daughters, and we are so pleased to have you here in our circle.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. I want to thank Dr. Sandra Domon, who actually first told me about the gathering you were having for Sonia Sanchez. So that's how I ended up at this first one, which led to this one. So thank you all very much, and thank you all for welcoming me into your circle.
Absolutely. So today we want to hear mostly from you, and we'll want to hear about your journey, how you became a literary scholar that you are. I'm interested in hearing your experience of migrating here. Because the one thing I left out that I read several times when I was reading about you is that your heart belongs to Haiti, which I love. So, and we want to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. We all have questions about what's happening there, what happened here in this past election and leading up to it. So, whatever you're comfortable in sharing with us, please do.
All right. Well, I look forward to your questions, and also I think Professor Casimir-Simpson, Professor Manago for agreeing to chat, like singularly chat. And thank you so much to also for hosting. So I was born in Haiti, and actually during the Duvalier dictatorship. I was born during when the elder Duvalier, who was referred to as Papa Doc, was in power. And then when I was 2, the son, Baby Doc, came to power. And today a few Haitian friends that we've been texting with, who are watching what's happening in Syria with Assad. We feel like some of us have been thinking about how it, it sort of seems, it's bringing back memories, for example, 1986 when Baby Doc Duvalier fled Haiti after an uprising in the community. The dictatorship was 30 years. And so in 1981, so my parents left, my dad left Haiti when I was 2. He was one of the first people in our immediate family to go. My mother had a brother, my Uncle Justin, who was in Brooklyn. And so my dad joined him there, and then my mom when I was 4. And I, like a lot of, Caribbean young people have had this experience, or people really even in the Southern United States. I remember reading, that's one of the great points of recognition for me with Maya Angelou, that she was raised by her grandmother, but because I was raised by my aunt while my parents were in the United States. And when I was 12 years old, they were able to send for me to come to Brooklyn. And that was 1981, which was also a very pivotal time in Haitian life in the United States, and something that keeps reoccurring in different forms, I find, in discourse about Haitians in the United States, because 1981 was a time where people were starting to talk about what they then called GRID, something like grade. It was gay-related immune deficiency, and that eventually became known as AIDS and HIV. And as Haitians, we were the only people identified by nationality as being high risk. And so imagine, you just arriving in the United States at that time. I remember the middle school that I went to, the Haitian kids would get beat up and teased about that. There was even a field trip that we weren't allowed to go on because they weren't sure that we should be on the bus with the other kids. So it was a really tough time, but plowed through. I, just really wanted to actually, there was, I think one of the things that gets a little bit buried in the conversation about immigration, but it's something also that's very much in front of our eyes, especially in New York City, when you see, the children in the subway, the parents selling candy with the children in the subway. A lot of immigration, of course, is driven by a desire for a better life for the next generation, right? For what people do for their children. And I saw my parents when I got here. My dad was a cab driver. My mom worked in factories and all of that. They weren't doing that to become rich or to have fancy clothes. It was all about the children. And that's something also that kept always drove me. Like, my dream was always like, when I have some money, I'm going to pay for my parents' house. I'm to kind of return that favor. And writing was one of the ways that I was able to kind of lay out my dreams at the same time. It was a way that I could dream. And at the same times at the same times dig into my memories. And there were so many things that about Haiti that I did not want to forget, because I was 12 years old and I could see gradually that my time in Haiti was going to always stay the same, even if I visited, but my time in the US would just be increasing. And my parents would always promise us that we would go the following summer to Haiti, but gradually I realized that with 4 children and 2 parents, like that would be a lot of plane tickets, and then you have to buy gifts. And I knew they wouldn't be able to do that, but this was this dream that we held on to. So one way that I went home was through writing. and through reading. I remember going to the Brooklyn Public Library. I mentioned, Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. That was the first book I ever read in English. And I read it with a dictionary, but I was so driven. I felt such a sense of connection with young Ms. Angelo in her situation and the way of having parents far away, of sort of the living under the dictatorship, which was very different from her experience, but seeing that threat of violence still, especially singularly for a young girl. And I also read Haitian novels for, through and through for the first time as a way to go home. And then I started writing. When I was in high school at Clara Barton High School, I was part of a program called, a newspaper called New Youth Connections. It still exists now. It's mostly online, New Youth Communications, it's called. And Veronica Chambers went through it, Rachel Swarns, quite a few young women writers, young men too. Florence Lafarge went through it, who's a professor now at Yale, I think. So you basically went to the paper and you wrote articles that then was published in the newspaper that was distributed through different high schools. And I wrote one about my first day in the United States, and basically my biggest memory from that day was the escalator, of going on the escalator when you get off the plane. And it made me think, that journey of the plane made me think of Asoto Saint, who is, poet and who actually there's a book of his writings that were compiled, but he has his own collection, and there's a piece in that where he writes about sort of like his life just changing on that ride between Port-au-Prince and JFK, like him becoming a whole different person. And I saw that, the way that these giant mechanical things can just like, what I wrote about in that first essay was the escalator is almost like a carpet, kind of sliding me, into a new life with parents whom I had not seen in 8 years, and my brothers who I saw once when my parents came to visit, but they were babies, and just really trying to make a new life. So I try to capture that in the essay, and eventually, that's really how I started writing Breath Ice Memory. I knew I wanted to tell more of that story. I was young, I was 18, I didn't have really big life experience. So I said, I want to invent a life for this character. So that's how I started writing.
That's fascinating. And I read somewhere that another thing that inspired your writing was that because you were separated from your family, that you all did a lot of letter writing back and forth. So that inspired your writing. So I'm just curious, did you save those letters?
Oh, I wish I had, but letter writing was a very big part of my life in that way and another way as well. So those letters, I think my uncle would have had in his possession, because my it seems very strange to me now that this is even a method of communication, but it was very effective. So my parents would write, sometimes they would write letters, a lot more, more often they would send cassettes where they said things. So they sent money in this envelope with maybe a note and a cassette that was more detailed about how to spend the money, what was happening with them. So my uncle probably had all of these that we lost in the earthquake, probably because his house was destroyed in the earthquake, but he was a really good record keeper, and so he passed away in 2004, like before the earthquake, but the house was still there. His son had taken over. His office was still there, like the land papers were, so he probably had those. But my parents would send those and he would keep them, and then we would write back. My dad, I didn't find those in his briefcase when he passed. So, but it would have been wonderful to have those. He did keep some of our report cards that were sent to him. So actually I have some of my report cards from Haiti that I found in my dad's briefcase when he passed. But the other way also letter writing was very central to my life was I would sometimes we were asked to write letters for other people when you're as a child, like you would be asked to write a letter for someone who had a loved one abroad, and they would tell you what to say, and then you would try to write it in your best, I try to write it in my best French. And I felt, in the same way that immigrant children get a glimpse into their parents' lives through doctor's visits, through translation.
Translation.
That's often a rite of passage for many of us. I remember when I was 15 going to the doctor with my mother, and the doctor saying her blood pressure was so high that she needed to just be like hospitalized. And she said, "Tell him no, I'm going home. I have children at home." And just like it's something that I don't think she would have wanted me to know, but because of that translation, my brother sometimes had to go to my mother's factory to talk to her boss to make sure, to ask for money. She wasn't paid. And all of that is something like that they wouldn't have wanted us to know. So in that same way, when I was, little in Haiti, people would ask me to write letters, and I would sometimes they were love letters, sometimes they were, and you're just kind of like have to pretend you're not that interested, but you're like, oh my God.
So did you steal any of their lines and use them to get your husband?
No, well, I mean, they think there was actually, and what I most remember about the courtship of younger Haitian women at that time is that playing hard to get was like rule number one. Not even playing hard to get, you had to be like playing impossible to get.
Absolutely. Impossible is the word.
Is that what you did, Narline?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's
Anyway.
not always good to play impossible. Impossible is going too far, I would say. Yeah.
Let me,
But if I may, very quickly, Miss Danticat, it is such
Edwidge is fine if you can pronounce it.
It is
She
yeah,
can.
it's such a pleasure to be here, for me to be a co-host, and to have this opportunity to speak with you. And when Helen told me about the program, her idea, and she mentioned your name, I was like, yes, absolutely, yes. So we have a lot of similarities. I'm not gonna go into too many details about it, but I was born under the baby doc regime. I was he left when I was 2 years old, so I have some early memories of total my roots. And also in reading some passages of your book, a lot of things were reminded me of like growing up in Haiti and also being an immigrant. Now, if I may ask you about this, when I read that sentence, it just touched me. And this is where you talked about how in Haitian folklore, eating salt is a way to awaken zombies. And you stated to one of your students, young writers, that you write because somehow I was given salt. So when I read that, I quickly underlined it. I thought that was beautiful. If you can tell us and you've mentioned to us why you write and how you stay connected to your roots through your writing. If you can tell us that one incident or that one event that happened, that occurred, that is the salt that awakened you and pushed you to write.
Thank you. I'm so happy you were able to participate in this. So I, sold first that myth to, the story of like the salt as an awakening. And it's something we'd always heard, like if someone, when they feed like the story of zombies, right? Like, and we can read, like Zora Neale Hurston, for example, writes about zombies, which sometimes it's a person that somehow, the story of it was that it was a way to to get labor out of people, especially like to enslave people. And but and then there was the US imagination about it from these Marines who were there doing the occupation, and they started this whole trend of the zombie movies. But what we were told is that, it was almost as a cautionary tale, like if perchance or per misfortune you were in that situation, salt was the way to awaken you, right? And sometimes, one thing like in my family, like if someone had just had some bad news, they would give you a little coffee with salt in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as a way to kind of wear off the shock, as a way to kind of make your blood flow. So I'd always thought of salt in that way. But I mean, you think also of, Tony Cadwell Barris, the salt eaters, and Derek Walcott's, talks about the sea and the way the salt, the sea's history, the sea's memory. And I always linked that with salt for some way. So that was part of the thing that I was trying to explore there. But there were so many moments for me. When I was little, I had these women in my life, my aunts, my grandmothers, family friends who, they were poor women. So in the general world, like when they went to the bank or when they went to certain spaces that was not their space, there was a way that they were looked down on, or and sometimes like you would see them come alive in many spaces. The church was one, and community and voodoo ceremonies and other spaces where they felt at home. But storytelling was one too, and that was one of the few spaces where adults in my life and children interacted in that way. The rest of the time, you were not even supposed to look at them in the eye. That was considered disrespectful to like glare into an adult's eye. But doing the story, you could do that. Doing the storytelling, like at night, you could, when they were telling stories, but they became little girls. And I remember being really awed by that. And really and early on in my life, that made me aware of like the power of a story and the power of storytelling in that sense, not in a theoretical or vague sense, but in its ability to transform these really stern, like life-beaten women into little girls again, with smiles, with delight, with joy, and sharing a story and listening to a story. So that was the first time I thought, this is the power of a story. But I didn't have that gift that they had, in the sense that I couldn't become lively. I wasn't a lively storyteller in that sense. I was a very shy little girl. I was happy by myself. And I remember when I was 4, my uncle gave me a book, and it was this book, The Madeline in a House of Paris, the Madeline book
Yeah.
by 12 little girls living with nuns. And I thought, this is kind of our situation, because my uncle had all their people, like people were just flowing through our house from the countryside and then there were other children, like my cousin whose mom was in Canada, another cousin whose dad was in the Dominican Republic working. And so we were like, so I thought, oh, this kind of little, this Madeline thing in Paris, wherever that is very similar to what's happening in my house, where you don't know who these kids' parents necessarily are. And when I remember sitting with that book and thinking, wow, this is another way of doing storytelling. And this is a way that best might fit me, and that goes to the title of this book, We're Alone, because I'm alone with the storyteller. I'm alone with this person. I can pick this up. Like, I don't have to wait until it's night, and and I just realized like the power of books too. And I'm like, I want to do that. I want to kind of combine this very lively thing with this feeling of sitting in a corner with a book, and it's just yours. And that person, those words are just speaking to you at that moment. And so for me, I felt like that was the moment I was given the salt, if you will. I felt like this is what I want to do. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that.
Cleo has a question. Go ahead, Cleo.
Hello again. I want to contextualize my question. I've traveled all over the world. I mean, all over the world. And the place that I value going the most is Haiti.
Mm.
And I've been back to Haiti about 4 times, to Cape Haitian and Port-au-Prince and in between. And I caught myself crying often when I was there because I was so moved. And when I almost lost it when I went to the Citadel, because I'm a grown, pardon my language, I'm a grown ass man, been a scholar around Black history and slavery, diasporic conscious, etc. And nobody told me about the Citadel.
Mhm.
Have you been to the Citadel?
Oh, many times, yes. Yeah.
I won't get into it, but you already know it's absolutely, there's no words.
It's
And what,
majestic. Yeah.
yes, but what
Yeah.
makes it even more of no words is that most people don't know anything about it. And most African Americans don't know much about Haiti. And that's not an accident. I remember during the grid period, and as you know, what's now called HIV was blamed on Haitians, and also preceding that, it was blamed on African monkeys in Africa.
Mhm.
And I was always, but at that time of my age, I was very skeptical about white folks and didn't trust them and didn't trust their information. So I would always look behind it. And I've since learned years ago that it was whites from Europe and the United States who brought HIV to Haiti by purchasing the bodies of poor Haitians, that they brought it there. And there was not a lot of recanting to change that lie. And a lot of, and this gets to my question, in terms of navigation. I nothing about Haiti except for what white folks told them, that y'all like to get drunk and walk around raising the dead, and there's this evil thing called voodoo that is, and all this crazy stuff. I was wondering, how do you and how have you navigated through industrial strength ignorance about where you're from among people who kind of look like you and have a similar background in terms of fighting against oppression? How do you navigate in that soup?
Mhm. Thank you for that. First of all, I think someone was asking what the Citadel was. So it's in the north of Haiti, the Citadelle La Ferrière. It's so post Haitian independence in after 1804, when Haiti became, the first Black republic in the world, the first place where enslaved people overcame those who had enslaved them and started their own republic. So then they were different rulers in different sections, but one thing they did, and they had disagreements, but one thing they agreed on was how ways in which to fortify Haiti against the French returning. And so they started building different forts, and the Citadelle de la Ferrière was built, by King Christophe. Alejo Carpentier has The Kingdom of This World. His novel is centered, is around that. There are other books about it, but it's at the top of a very it's, if you go, if you're a hiker, you can do it on foot, but some people, you get to the
I did
bottom of
donkey.
it. Yeah,
I
most
was on
people
a
do it
donkey.
on a on a donkey. It's really like when you get there, you feel very close to the clouds, very close to the sky, and it's really and it was built right, so that people can see, like the King Christophe who was there, and a scholar, Marlene Dowd, has a book coming out that covers a lot of this, the time of King Christophe, and so the Citadel then looks over the sea, look like the whole region of the north, basically, so that they would know when the French were coming immediately. But it's a gorgeous monument. So how to manage, like, basically from the time I arrived, and a lot of, I think, Haitians and Haitian Americans um, have worked with that. I mean, I think also to share information, other information that folks do not know. For example, most of, the Harlem, Haiti used to be seen, I think, because of um, the revolution, as a place that, like, people who care about the Black world, people who care about freedom must go. Like, so you had, during the Harlem Renaissance, a lot of Harlem Renaissance writers went to Haiti, Langston Hughes, and actually translated a Haitian writer, Jacques Roumain's book, Gouverneur de la Osée as Masters of the Dew. So Langston Hughes and Mercer Cook translated that book, and Langston Hughes actually wrote a children's book, Popo and Fifina, set in Cap-Haïtien. And Zora Neale Hurston went to Haiti. I think and then, up to, today I'm thinking of Rendell Robinson, who was very committed to Haiti, wrote about what followed, this period of the French forced Haiti to pay this debt for the independence that would now be in billions of dollars. And Rendell Robinson was one of the first people to talk about that in the mainstream and write this book, The Debt. I think it was called The Debt. So I think we bring out commonalities to get, forward first. And we're entering a period where I think, and I see people talk in this way, starting with the mayor of this New York City we're entering a period where there's going to be so much divide and conquer. And I think this, we started doing an election. This one ain't black, she ain't black, and this other people are telling us who's black and who's not black, I think, like, with immigration at the center. So it's something that has been happening, I think, with Haitians, right, from Springfield, Ohio, but before that, what this incoming group has been saying about Haitians. So I think more and more we will have to, as this climate is gearing up and escalating its discourse on immigration, we will see more of that, more of like, these other types of Black people are taking your Black. You should hate these other types of Black people. And I think more and more we have to be first compassionate. We have to be informed. We also have to realize what's going on in terms of these attempts at trying to divide us as Black people, and as people in the African diaspora, and to realize what the ultimate goal is. It is not ultimately to elevate one group of us, but it's to kind of pull down all of us. So I think more and more, like, we're all going to have to explore and know more about one another and cherish the things that we have in common together.
Yeah. If I may call on, if Helen, if that's okay, I wanted to call on, there was a question in the chat. I know that it states, first of all, Toya has a question. I don't know if Toya wanted to ask the question out loud or put it in the chat, but there's also a question by Shakira Abdul Ali.
Right. Toya, did you want to come ask your question live, or do you want us to just read it for
I
you?
can do it live.
Okay.
I'm
Go
just
ahead.
outside.
Okay, do your thing.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, Edwidge. I don't know if you remember, I met you in the summer in Martinique at the Toni Morrison Symposium.
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I was just wondering, I know you're a professor now, and I'm just thinking about, like, with everything that we're facing, if like how your syllabi might be changing in a sense, or if it is changing. And I just wanted to express gratitude for what you shared about, like, women becoming like little girls when they're telling stories, because I think that speaks to the power of literature. And as someone who also teaches, and I'm considering how to change my syllabi, just thinking about, like, what can we be asking this new generation to read in the face of all of the things that they're facing right now, and that we're all facing together.
Thank you. And it's good to hear from you. I think, there are veteran professors on that, and I would love for them to also chime in, because I think that's a very important question in terms of strategies going forward. Some of us will be completely, let's say, constrained by our institutions, certainly in terms of, if you're in Florida, if there are words you can't even have on your syllabus, like they're scanned for certain words, and that, and that's happening more and more. So I think that's something we also have to keep in mind with folks who are in that situation. So this past semester, I was teaching a course on writing with photographs from the African diaspora. And we were able to, as the election came up, to address like our feelings through images, like the images that were coming across, especially I find the day after the election, we wrote about the images from Howard that evening, right, where folks were standing there waiting, and those were extraordinarily images. So that was one way of accessing emotions, like for students to see, perhaps, now I don't assume anymore that I have the same political leanings as other people, but that was a way to for folks to address whatever they were feeling by looking at like in some cases, the crestfallen faces of some of these young people who are like them, but on another campus. And next semester, I'm teaching 2 classes. I'm teaching on the nonfiction of Ntozake Shange. And a lot of students know For Colored Girls, let them know her poetry. But she wrote about everything. She wrote about food, she wrote about dance, she wrote about music. But she also wrote about her time protesting, and her dad bringing her and her friends fried chicken on the picket line, and she wrote about navigating institutions, right? And while still being beholden to the community that you belong to, that you have to be able to go back to. And so I think she's an excellent model for that, especially on this, I'm on a campus where she also, she went to Barnard. And so that always lights up the student's face. And we go into her archive to see her journals and to actually see. So I think all these things like really help students in terms of like thinking of the possibility that someone who might seem really brave was also a student here, right? Was also working through things. And another course I'm teaching is called Writing in the Presence of Ancestors. And we start with Toni Morrison's Rootedness, and Alice Walker's Looking for Zora, In Search of Zora. And this idea, I think, of ancestry being a powerful connection. I mean, I think, and one of the things in this book, I quote, it's one of my favorite Audre Lorde, quotes, where she says, there are no new pains. We have felt them all already. And if you think of that in terms of ancestry, but so one thing that will change in the Morrison, I'm also going to add her essay in the Nation, which I've already recommended to so many friends. I did a reading recently with Michelle Stevenson, who's a filmmaker who did a film on Nikki Giovanni, and we started by reading this Toni Morrison essay in the Nation. Where she says, this is exactly the time when that's the essay where that comes from. This is time when writers go to work. I think the title of the Nation is No Self-Pity, No Despair. It's time. This is the time when all of us go to work, and whatever that way that work manifests for us, whether it's on our syllabus, whether it's in our community, whether it's our neighbor, with our families, it's definitely, I think, a time as we're being rendered, it's a time for us to try to mend.
I'm glad you mentioned the book, because the title of your book, of course, this was written long before this past election, but the title that says We're Alone it's so appropriate to what Black folks in America are coming to reckon ourselves with, that we're alone. And I know that's not why you chose the title, but I just thought it was kind of poetic, if you will, that it kind of resonates with what's happening, with the mood that's happening right now.
Yeah. I mean, also we have to, I mean, one of the other ways I thought of this, we're alone, is that we're alone together, right? I think it's also worth emphasizing. And I think,
Yeah.
do you want to say, Dr. Green, you want to add your comment about just the modality, like in adding another idea in terms of,
Well, one of the things that we know, I'm not teaching now, but I hear this all the time, is that our students aren't reading. They're not reading outside of the classroom. And so one way to really engage them and to also avoid having your syllabus targeted because of what you're teaching is to have the students be the leaders in doing the research and looking at their environment and going and drawing on the text you want to discuss and looking at the essays, looking at video presentations. Have the students take the lead so you don't become the center or you're not perceived as someone who's giving what some people will call, oh, you're doing propaganda with our students. Let the students go out and find that work and bring it into the classroom and try and to encourage and make your classroom the center of where much of the reading and the talking and the writing about what's going on is taking place. Because we have a generation of young people who are not reading, and what's going to connect them and engage them is our multimedia formats. So make that the center and take it away from you as the person standing there giving a lecture.
Thank you.
Mhm.
In my classes, we often do, like, as part of the response, one thing I always add a section where they do a resource that they find themselves. So inspire. So what do you like, whether it's a video or a poem or another reading, like a resource that they find that they feel is missing in the reading. And I've had really wonderful response to that, so much so that sometimes, you take the resource and introduce it in class. For example, when the execution of Marcellus, I'm forgetting his name, when that man was executed, we had class the next day, and clearly some of the students were very affected by that, and some of their resources were so we ended up reading in class some of his poetry because they had brought in as their resources some poetry that he had written, and we all got an opportunity to read his poetry together in a way that we might not have. So that's a
Thank you.
wonderful suggestion. Yeah.
Thank
I
you,
wanted
Mr.
to,
God, Mrs. Green.
I
Go
wanted
ahead,
to
Cleo.
underscore, I wanted to underscore something that you just said, which I think needs to be said even more. I haven't read We Are Alone yet, so I don't know about its content, but I completely agree with what you said, which is we have each other. And we are, quote, alone with each other, which is a oxymoron, if you will, because we have a huge family. We have an amazing family, and I have had the fortune to see the family on a global level. And we have some things in common, particularly not only when it comes to indigenous culture, foods, habits, imagination, but the impact of colonialism on everybody and how it's manifested is all of our struggle, that severe interruption. But I just wanted to reiterate that we are not alone. We're isolated. We're um, we're torn apart. Just like that's why I mentioned earlier about African Americans generally having no clue about Haiti. And I think if they knew about and one thing that Helen has heard me say many, many times is Haiti should be our Israel, without the exploitation, but should be where we all on a global scale um, invest in and support and build up, because it's one of the most significant places among Black people in the world and in history. And there's nothing like it in terms of what, that's why I mentioned the center. Like I said, part of it being redundant, but I was crying. When I went to the Citadel, I was like, what how come I don't know about this? And how come most Black people don't know about this? I mean, Helen, this this edifice is on the scale of things that people watch in Game of Thrones, uh,
Absolutely.
which is fantasy, but this really happened, and it's really real, and it's really there. And there was some, based on the story I was told, there was some Vodun influences in the psyche of the people that were not caught up in white codependent religion. That's a whole other thing that maybe Edwidge can break down. But I just want to reiterate to everybody listening and to tell everybody that we have each other, and we keep not knowing that, and we keep being actively separated. And Haiti in particular, even back during the grid period, is actively, vindictively, in terms of perspective on the place, destroyed constantly. And it's a lot. The majority of what they're saying is out of context. It's a damn lie. It's not true. And it's part of the recipe that keeps us in conflict, when if we came together, oh my God, it would be
And
amazing.
And Dr. Manago, I think your comment is a very good segue to the question asked by Shakira Abdul Ali in the comments. She's not able to get on screen, but her question is, I would like to get your understanding of the current strife in Haiti, mostly wondering why outside help does not seem to be welcomed or accepted.
Okay, so it's a very, I mean, that's a very long and complicated situation, of course. But I think also to bridge with Dr. Monago's question is that we also have to ask ourselves why, I mean, especially in the discourse in the past election, why basically Haiti was used as a proxy for Blackness.
That's right.
Right. And it was, you could say things about these quote unquote Haitians through also the lens of xenophobia that you had a sense that they really wanted to say about Black people, but they felt like, okay, Haitians are like Piti Misangado, which is saying like sort of like seeds without owners. It's a terrible translation of that saying. And so that you could do these things, but it was also a very clear message. And I'm always, not surprised, but curious about the real source of like hatred that this particular person has for Haiti, because it just comes up like with AIDS and Don Jr. saying,
Edwidge,
talking
I think
about
you know.
IQ.
Yeah.
Edwidge,
Mhm.
Edwidge, I think you do know what's going on
No,
here.
I do.
You
I do
must.
know. I know. I know. But I'm just saying it's sort of like it went from like the last time to sort of uh like it's just like all uncovered now. It's kind of like you can say whatever you want, and it's very clear that it's not just about Haitians, that it's sort of proxy for Blackness, it's proxy for local Blacks, for global Blackness, right? It's kind of like Haitians, it's almost like Black when they speak about Haitians in this way. But the current, so the current situation, what you see on the news all the time, is Port-au-Prince, for example, is taken over by 80% of the capital is taken over by armed groups. And so one of the, who are now so sophisticated and so widespread and so armed that they are paramilitaries, right? And they've cleared certain neighborhoods. I've had family members who've been, like displaced 2 or 3, 4 times. They go to an area, the armed groups. Now, in addition to, so one of the immediate things that, and you talked about foreign intervention. So Haiti's had foreign intervention consistently from the US occupation in 1915 to 2004 after President Aristide, well, there was a coup against President Aristide, the first democratically elected president in 1990s. And even the military who participated in the coup, they admitted that they were trained at Fort Benning, and there was a CIA connection to that. And then again in 2004.
Yep.
So there was this sort of destabilization of Haiti from even before from 1804, where you had Thomas Jefferson calling Haitians cannibals, and the fact that there was this revolution, there's this proximity to the U.S. meant that the Haitian Revolution was inspiring enslaved people throughout the region, including in the United States, and they didn't think that was the good thing. And there was at some point some idea that enslaved people from Haiti would be shipped to Haiti, and some were to a place called Île Vache, this island called Île Vache, but they were shipped back. That was a place for them to go. There were others who chose, like churches in Philadelphia, and actually Caitlin Greenidge's book Liberté is about that, African Americans who chose to move to Haiti. And in the book, there's a discourse about whether, going to Haiti was a kind of surrender, whether they should stay to fight. So I think Haiti has always been in part, Frederick Douglass was a general consul to Haiti. And one of the reasons actually he's considered to have failed was that he would not hand over this place called Mole Saint-Nicolas that the U.S. wanted. They wanted to do like a Villasquez, a kind of offshoot, like a Guantanamo, like this kind of place that the U.S. has. He didn't deliver that, and so you could see the long gate, like how much the U.S. has been involved in Haiti for geopolitical reasons, for some say resources, reasons of resources. And so what's happening now, though, it's, so after the earthquake, that you asked about the people being reluctant about U.S. intervention or outside intervention. So after you had in 2004, when the UN came, they left cholera in Haiti for a reason that they never really acknowledged it. They never compensated people. There have been cases against it. And the more recent intervention is with some Kenyan sources who have really not made much of a difference in terms of, the Haitian police is still fighting this fight on their own. But one of the things that I think, if the U.S. were serious, a thing that can instantly be done is the flow of these guns, right? Because you have that's one thing, that you have these guns coming across from Miami, from the Dominican border, that these armed groups, that they're armed better than the police. And where are these guns coming from? Who is paying for them? Who is paying for the armed groups? They have had sanctions of certain people, but the sanctions, they don't do anything for real with the sanctions. That's one possible way to stop. So that's the very long and mumbled answer, but it's I think part of the ongoing pain of those of us who live here, who have family, is that through whoever is funding them, whoever is sponsoring them, these armed groups are able to have so much overwhelming power over the lives of the population. And then the construct that's been made to lead the country, like 9 people who take turns, who are supposed to organize an election, seems a bit stalled, like seems sometimes they're infighting, just it doesn't seem like it's up to the task at the same time that the people are suffering, that people are dying.
And I was in Haiti. I grew up in Haiti. I came to the US in 2001. I was 16 going on 17. So I was there when Aristide, our first democratically elected president, was that there was a coup, and I remember seeing the the army men from the US coming in, and as young kids we of course did not understand what was going on. We kind of like saw it like as a maybe like a positive. It's fun, like, you know, from watching movies. The US is the great liberator in movies, and a lot of the of people in Haiti did not understand what was happening truly. But I think it has been a repeat of our history since we gained our independence, where Haiti was never allowed to be this independent nation that could have autonomy and make its own decisions. It started with the ostracization of Haiti once we gained our independence, because of what that meant to the world, to the economic powers of the world, with like Black people being able to govern themselves and saying no to slavery. To then you have the occupation of Haiti under Woodrow Wilson in 1915. And again, you have the destabilization, and up until the death of Jovenel Moïse.
Yeah.
Exactly, up until the death of Jovenel Moïse. So the reason why Haitians are reluctant to accept help is not that they don't want to be helped. It's just that that help has never been truly about caring for the Haitian people, but it's a way to steal from our natural resources that we have, and destabilize the country in a way where those who could be there in the country to truly govern are forced to flee. And now, of course, that makes me think of the many people who have had to flee Haiti under the Duvalier regime. A lot of like the intellectuals who were forced to leave the country, and how all of these things are happening. The things that are happening in Haiti are not happening in a vacuum. They are not happening because Haitians cannot govern themselves. There are forces outside of Haiti that benefit from Haiti being destabilized, and it is really, really hard for the people to fight these forces.
Yeah, and I think forces outside also in collusion, if you will, with forces inside.
Absolutely.
With a sort of with a predatory political class, with oligarchs, with people that in some ways the chaos benefits them. It benefits their money, it benefits their business, and as people suffer.
Absolutely.
I think it's important that African Americans know that Maxine Waters and Randall Robinson saved Aristide from being murdered. They literally chartered a plane and went over there and took him out before they were able to kill him. And they took him to a lot of us don't know that. And I also just want to talk about a similar phenomenon in terms of these guns that show up. I'm from Compton, California. You may have heard of Compton. I don't know if it was accurate, whatever you heard. Because it's often not. But I remember being a kid there, and boys may have macho, ridiculous fights, but nobody was killing nobody. It just did not happen. And in a lot of Black communities in the United States, the train tracks go through, as people, I don't use this term, but I use it to be dramatic right now. The train tracks go through, quote unquote, the hood, as they call it. And one day, somebody left a couple of train cars full of guns, full to the tip with guns. And these gang members, these boys, had guns and were able to start using guns to fight against each other and kill each other. But and someone says smells like CIA. Well, there's evidence of that. Maxine Waters also was confronting the CIA for bringing those guns in. But I'm just trying to, show the dichotomy here of what they do. It's the same thing between the Rwandans, the Hutus, and the what was the other group? Tutsi. They brought the hatchets.
Mhm.
The hatchets came from the French, and they piled them in front of the church of all places. And they started using the self-hate that the whites created between them, and the conflict became, obviously lethal. But I'm just looking at the similarities because you're right. I mean, where do they get these guns in Haiti? And how come there's more guns than there is infrastructure support and independence support? Because Haiti is gorgeous. I mean, it's a beautiful. I mean, a lot of people don't know, despite the poverty, the coast, the mountains, the seafood, I mean, what if a white supremacist, evil, sinister? It could be a perfect place for vacations and things like that. But that's interrupted, so there won't be no normalized black back and forth with Haiti because we don't know, and they want to make sure we continue not to know.
Well,
Yeah, and oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, talking about how beautiful Haiti is. The Clintons honeymooned in Haiti, and ever since then they have not really left Haiti. So that just tells you about how beautiful our country is.
Stunning, it's stunningly beautiful.
I don't know if the Clintons were a gift to us though, but
No, I'm not. I am not saying they are a gift.
no, okay, but
I'm just saying they honeymoon there and
yes,
have not left. And Bill Clinton has had to apologize. He apologized because he is policies that were implemented in the U.S. Destroyed our rice industry to benefit the rice industry in Arkansas. Right? For his brother's governor. So I was just saying that.
Oh yes.
And he was as much a gift. He was as much a gift to Haiti as he probably was to Harlem. I think we're seeing the same thing.
Even though he apologized, he didn't give up no money.
He did.
And when we, talk about like even with resources, apparently, Hillary Clinton's brother owns a lot of mining rights and in Haiti, and we're always being told that we have nothing, right? Like, so if we have nothing, how come you own mining rights?
Exactly.
And so, I mean, I think, that's the thing. I mean, I was thinking as you were talking about the beauty of Haiti, like where I go most often is my mother-in-law. I talk about this in the book too, in the South. And it's really one of the few places that I've been in the Caribbean where and it's like Isla Vache, that island that they was actually during Lincoln's era, that there were African Americans shipped to Isla Vache, and after a while some of them died and they sent a ship and were returned. But Isla Vache, for example, is such a beautiful island that it's but Haiti is one of the few places where poor people still live on the beach.
Yeah.
You could see a very modest house on the beach. And that's one of the things that I was trying to catch and capture in Claire of the Sea Light, like beachfront property, like really gorgeous. A lot of places, beachfront property is a modest house where this person has lived for generations, and that's their, it's a fisherman family. So because we haven't had that run of the tourism and all of that, there are many places that are so purely gorgeous, beautiful, that it's a shame.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The food is ridiculous. The seafood that they get to eat in Haiti every day, poverty or no poverty, they get to have this seafood, and they know how to put their foot in it and cook it too. It's delicious.
Let me hop in. There's two questions. I know we have Shakira and Miss Richards, but I don't want us to leave the point. I loved when you said that although the guy coming to the White House used the Haitian community as a scapegoat, we all know that it really projects to all of us. And I don't think people quite understand that. So, if they say Haiti, you can just substitute Black Americans, Jamaicans, Africans, but he's talking about all of us. And I think that we should, and thank you for making that point, because I think we if anybody's taking comfort in the fact thinking that you're okay because
Mhm.
you're not Haitian or you're not, a Black immigrant, wake up.
Mhm.
That's not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think,
May I add something?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, this is Edward. Hello, Edwidge. Yeah,
Hello.
we met at Ramapo, and we also met again at the gala and South Beach, the Haiti gala. But and Gitel Nicolos, my cousin, so we all met that day.
Okay.
But the one thing that you did also the filming with Jonathan Demme at Ramapo College, and I was there also helping. The one thing that you mentioned that I really wanted to bring into a much clearer connection is that in 1915 it was a Democratic president who sent the Marines in, and they went in and took all our gold and took all our dollars and invested into Citibank. That's why I refused to bank there. The other time with Aristide, it was also Bill Clinton, another Democratic president, and there was one more time, I can't think of it, but I was able to do that research and connect it to the Democrats. Now, I'm not saying that the other side is the same bird with two different wings, but they do work together. But I was a little annoyed that the Black Caucus has not stepped into this thing to see, hey, what's going on here, and I thought about writing to them, and some friends suggest that I not do it. But I was really concerned that really we didn't get support, not even from the African nations, and we didn't get any support from the Black Caucus here. And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. I mean, I think it is very important where you said, Roxane Gay wrote a piece during the whole thing in Springfield where she pointed that out, that it's especially on immigration policy that both, Democrat and Republican administrations tend to work similarly. And I think with this incoming administration, right, like they're just violently vocal about it, where others might just do the same thing, but more, while doing other things that seem positive. Like with there's the TPS that is also with a temporary protected status. Not just Haiti gets that, but Venezuela and other countries that seem also to be in danger. And then the humanitarian program. So they're doing other things, but like just recently, I think the other day, 70 people were deported, back to Haiti, even given given this this climate. So I think, I think that's something that goes to all the issues we're facing, right, in this coming period, that we're going to have to all be more discerning, more to pay attention. And there is a tendency, like it's like if you have a certain political affiliation and your person is in office, then you're like, okay, I can go to sleep, or I don't think we have that luxury anymore, whoever it is, right? And that hypervigilance has to remain.
And Edward, backing on that, in We're Alone, the chapter where you talk about Jovenel Moise, and there was the woman who was pretty much positioned herself as a prophetess. She stated she was trying to warn Jovenel Moise that he was going to be assassinated. He was going to be killed. I forgot her name. Selora.
Yeah.
Selora. So Selora was going around trying to tell him, like, you're going to be assassinated. And other people even mentioned, you're going to be assassinated. Something's going to happen. And Jovenel Moise himself, he also had some kind of premonition, although he was not he did not didn't seem like he took the threats really seriously. And I remember when he made the statement that cooking on guajo, like he's gonna be like and the translation like cooking on guajo,
like stuck in your throat.
Yeah, he's gonna be stuck. Like
stuck in your throat.
Yeah, stuck in your throat. He's gonna be a problem. And to me, it's interesting because one of after his assassination, one of the things I've learned is that a former U.S. ambassador did state months before his assassination that the problem with Haiti is that the president is the solution to Haiti is for the president to step aside and to have a prime minister. And once the assassination happened, the sort of was like, oh, this was a coincidence. Like we were not advocating for the assassination of the president. So that's something that people who know their history, Haitians who know their history, who understand geopolitical maneuvers by the bigger power, they understand and they do not forget that. And they also do not forget under whose regime the president was assassinated. So a lot of it, and again, Edwidge said something that is very important. It's two wings of the same bird. We have to be very vigilant. We have to keep our minds open and not think that because this person is in power, it's this group that we can go to sleep. In fact, many times they try to lull us to sleep. So we have to keep our eyes and ears open.
Yeah, I mean, if you think, I mean, like the president's, Jovenel Moise's assassination, and folks talked a little bit more about that at the time, that the last time a Haitian president was assassinated it led to the U.S. occupation for 19 years.
Yep.
And so there was that very direct correlation. And this is one of those, I mean, there's so many projects on it, like people trying to figure out. This is one of the greatest mysteries, right? Like who assassinated him, why? But it's also telling that one of the assassins went in there. Like one of the ways that the guards were asked to lay down was to announce that he was with the DEA.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that some of the suspects were informants of the DEA. And it's such a muddled and there's been investigations and accusing everyone from the wife to colleagues to and there are images of like the FBI coming and getting suitcases full of things that they never put a report out about. So it's they're of course they're if you're Haitian, sometimes they think you're being a conspiracy theorist when you say this, but it's of course there are things at play. There are things that they want from us that we don't even know like exactly all the details, but obviously Haiti's being destroyed for a reason.
Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely. We have two hands, and I know that you need to get back to your finals, your final work with your classes.
Well, I'll stay till about 6. I can stay till 6. Yeah.
After these questions, could I ask the question since I forgot how to
I've
raise
had my hand up.
Wait. No, we got this. I got 3 hands up. I got Shakira.
Afterwards. Okay.
Wait,
I forgot who they are.
hold up. I have Shakira first, and then I have Diane Richards, and Charlotte, you can go after Miss Richards. Okay, go ahead, Shakira, please. Shakira. Okay, her hand is up. She's been up for a while. Okay, I'm moving on, Shakira. If you're there, just let me know when you pop back in. Miss Richards, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Edwidge. Thank you, Edwidge.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to ask you 2 things. One, if you could share with us a little bit of your writing process, because you write wonderfully. And the other is, how do you stay optimistic? Because it seems so that you have not lost faith at all in the face. How do you stay optimistic in the face of all of this chaos and negativity politically? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I'll start with I think someone's, I'll start with the optimism. I speak often to people in Haiti who are members of my family, who also, some of them are creators. And one of them, I recently wrote an article about, it's called The Haiti That Still Dreams, that was in the New Yorker. And I was talking to an artist friend who his family was, they had an art school, they're Saint-Éloi, and they're writers in the family, but artists. But the dad, had an art school. They taught young people, sewing, art, like all kinds of art. And then their home was taken over by these armed group, and they had to scatter and flee, and all their work, like all their beautiful work, was left behind. And I was talking to him, and he says, he said, what if we gave these young people like paint and canvas instead of these guns, like, and he was talking about like art is how they dream. And that for me, I found extraordinarily hopeful, because it's and the light, we've always said that, art is Haiti's greatest ambassador, and we're rich. People always saying like sort of the news
Come
tag
on, man.
that's always behind Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. We always say we're wealthy in terms of our art and culture. So I find a lot of hope in that. And I find, since the election, to have sat at things, including the student um, poetry reading with Poetry for the People this week, or student music, I find that I'm really comforted in those cultural spaces. I find that it's almost like anywhere where we gather, where we're in community today, is healing. So my hope, I get hope from that. And I think we're just like during the pandemic, Aja Monet, extraordinary poet, you should have her one of these Sundays. And she's touring now with her music, but she's a poet. And she used to have these gatherings during the pandemic, where poets come together. I think these spaces, your space is beautiful. Like, we have to create more of those, because we're going to need to be alone together. And those spaces, that's very important. So that gives me hope. I think we are, I think we are each other's, like it's in Gwendolyn books, we are each other's bond, we are each other's burdens, we are each other, like that's going to be more and more important. So in terms of my process, I usually start, like, sometimes it could be a dream, it could be a line, it could be it could be just a word, and something that just stops me and intrigues me. And then I usually make a perimeter for myself. This is where I'll start, this is where I'll end. And then just try to, write towards that. I don't outline. I like the surprises. I like that element of the process. So I love when the writing reveals to me something I hadn't planned. I love the surprises that the creative process offers us, at times. I'm still awed that you think of something and then you create something, whether it's music, whether it's paintings, whether it's writing. I'm still very much awed by that. I consider it a kind of miracle to be able to create something. And that makes me understand why, my friend who had like lost everything was able to say, like, we could dream through our art. Like, we can actually, that's one of the ways that we can start, creating the world we want, is through art.
Some
Thank
creators,
you so much.
Edwidge, call that the third space,
Mhm.
meaning where you go that you did not know you were going to go. And that
Exactly.
surprises and enchants you, like, oh my God, look at this.
Yeah, and then you're like, I mean, that's the thing I always tell young people, like, be patient with your art, even if it's not embraced the way you think, because you can read it 10 years later and you go, how did I know this? Like, and I think there's a spiritual element to it too, and I think that's why, like, I see this in ancestors class, right? Because we pair writers with who write about writers who have either passed on, we pair them together. And Toni Morrison said it very powerfully, like in that rootedness essay, like she said of herself, she said, I'm very interested to see what Black writers do in the presence of an ancestor. So I also love the idea of throwing ancestors in the mix. And I think that third space is a space in which it's most magical when we become vessels for whatever's coming through, whether it's coming through in a spiritual way, whether it's coming through in an ancestral way. That's really, I think that's the other layer to the work that we do, because then we become vessels for something. We're in this long continuity. Like, we're not alone in that way. We're sort of we're in a continuity, and sometimes this work is one ways that it manifests.
I have to ask you, how does it feel when you're 25 years old? You're writing a book that's just, I mean, Oprah didn't pick many Black books, to my dismay, for her book club, but you're one of them. So, I mean, you're 25. Well, I mean, Oprah's like the woman. How do you recognize, how do you deal with that? I mean, that has to be fascinating.
Well, I have to say, I have to refer to folks to Oprah 2.0. She's really in terms of Black books, Oprah 2.0 has had like so many wonderful choices, like Ta-Nehisi, the goddess that is Jesmyn Ward. So 2.0 has been more, like, so many more wonderful Black books. It was really, I mean,
25.
it was 3 years after, so it was 28. And I'd had the best advice that I had. I think we can take it even if we're not so young. But my editor, before Breath, Eyes, Memory came out, and Breath, Eyes, Memory, I have to call out to Brenda when Talib owned Nkuru Books, and I had my first reading of Breath, Eyes, Memory and at Nkuru Books. And I learned that recently he was like shelving books for the store, like hands-on, at that period of time. And I had my first reading there. But the advice that my editor had given me was to always have something started before before that becomes public. So she said, you're 25 years, you're 20, like 24 and the book is coming out. And she said, writers, you can either, like, however it's received, it might just freeze you in your tracks. You can, if you get too much praise, you might not be able to do anything else. If you get slammed, you might not be able to do anything else. So she says, write something, start something now before the other thing is published. So I've always done that. So before I have a thing out in the world, I start something else, so that whether the reception is good or bad, at least I know I have a thing going. So that's really what kept me grounded. Also, I have a family who they're very hard to impress in that sense. It's kind of like, you're not, it's like, it's great that you're an Oprah, but now come wash some dishes, and and I think that was very healthy for me. Yeah.
It
There
takes a
was a
Black family. It takes a Black family every time.
Yeah.
There was a
Yeah.
comment in the chat from Brenda Green. She says that Talib has named a song on his recent album, Breath, Eyes, and Memory. Edwidge was inspirational to him. So I didn't know about that song. I will listen to it after our conversation. But Edwidge, I'm sure, did you know about that song or not?
I did, actually. And it gained me a lot of like points with my teenage daughters. I was like, look at this.
Nice, very nice.
I told you your mama was cool.
Nice.
Here's one of your daughters is going to be a writer too, or did I just read too much into that?
Oh no, well, my daughter, who I write about in the book, there's a chapter, the closing chapter is called Writing the Self and Others, and it
Right.
talks about, she took a course in writing, and I thought, man, this is a great course. And actually, let me read you all the description for this course because it's amazing. It's Erica and Cardwell. So the description of the course was, imagine the essay is a body of water, far-flung and teeming into the distance, and you, the writer, are alone on shore. Will you enter the water? If so, how will you swim? Or will you stand on shore as the water splashes against your ankles? So she was like 16 years old taking this course. I'm like, I want to take this course. It sounds, just that description was so beautiful. So we were reading through the readings together, which had some of the reading was Adrienne Rich, Read Dead Awaken, Writing as Revision, and Audre Lorde's Poetry is Not a Luxury, which I think is going to be like daily reading for me the next couple of years. And so I was reading those with her, but she rarely shows me what she writes, which I understand. I respect that space, but yeah.
Is that generational stuff or self-consciousness or what?
I think it's having so I used to tell my children, I said, well, imagine if you have a doctor in the family and you have a fever, wouldn't you go to them with your fever? And they're like, no, writing doesn't work that way. So I think it's a bit
Good try, Mom. Good try, Mom.
yeah, I think it's a bit of like, this is my thing and this is your thing. And I immediately, go into teacher mode. Like it's hard to do mom mode. So I think that's a little bit like, I let them, I think it's like a thing of privacy. But I told them, I said, if you do write a memoir about me, let me read it first at least.
Edwidge,
What was the one?
I do have a question for you.
Wait. We got to get to Charlotte. Charlotte's been waiting for a while. Go
yes,
ahead,
absolutely.
Charlotte.
Thank you. Professor Danticat, it is truly an honor to be able to sit in front of you. At this big age, I used to not read fiction books. And then there was a book club at work and I missed the deadline for several. And finally they got to Farming of the Bones. I could not put the book down. I was transported as if I was in the middle of that strife. And yet you phrased it, it was very delicately written to me. Some of the most horrific things, such as when the woman smothered the other one in the river, just trying to cross. And every time there's strife, it's almost as if I can feel it through your writing. How did you, I think the other person hinted on this, but with your delicate spirit, how did you put yourself in that? How do you manage to live with that kind of violence and, put it out there in such a graceful way? I'm really thankful that you're teaching now because I learned so much and started reading fiction because of you.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you so much. So, that book, there was this whole, also part of the dictatorship was that Jean-Claude, the baby dog, had signed this contract with the Dominican Republic to deliver a number of workers for the cane fields. And so this novel is about a massacre of Haitian and Dominicans of Haitian descent who worked in the cane fields, who at some point Trujillo, in a kind of like Rwanda-like situation, wanted to whiten the population, and they decided that he was going to ordered a massacre of the Haitians on that side of the island. Then there's a very powerful film recently out called Parsley, because one of the ways that they try to differentiate between Haitians and Dominicans was whether they could say the word perejil. I'm failing, but the trilling of the R is a way that to give away Creole speakers versus Spanish speakers. So that was a clear incident of white supremacy. And Trujillo was trained actually during the U.S. There was a moment during the U.S. occupation where both Haiti and the Dominican Republic were occupied. The Dominican Republic for a shorter period of time, but Trujillo was one of the people who came out of that U.S. training and started leading the army, and then became president, and then ordered this massacre. But at the same time, and there's a woman, Michelle Walker, who wrote a book called Why the Cocks Fight, which talks about that. There was a very strong U.S. sugar interest in Cuba and also in the Dominican Republic. And they needed workers. They needed people to go over and work in the sugarcane fields. So the book is about that. And I've had family members who've gone to that period to work in the sugarcane fields. And when they come back, some of them, when you migrate, you're supposed to come back better off. And a lot of these folks would come back like emaciated, sick, and would basically come to die. And so I started researching that massacre and all the underlying reasons, and that was the book was about. And I remember, like when I first started doing readings, I would cry through the readings about this massacre. And people were like, kind of made fun. There's like, you're moved by your book. But then I thought, in my young age, I saw that film Amistad. And I remember crying through that whole thing in the theater. And then a friend who came with me was like, imagine whatever pain you're feeling, either writing the book or reading a book, or it's nothing like someone living it. And that's always stayed with me. And this idea of like we all honor the dead and the sacrificed, and in different ways. And the book for me was about like honoring that, a story that also, it's another story that a lot of people don't know, that there was this brutal massacre in our backyard. And it would be nice to say, oh, this is a terrible time we lived through, nothing like this can ever happen again. But we have, a preview of mass deportations happening in the Dominican Republic right now. People being rounded up and put in these cart-like things and being deported. And even before that, with the U.S. State Department saying to people who are traveling on vacation, who are Black Americans, who are Black, from, of different, to say that, hey, that you might be mistaken for one of the, and be rounded up too. So that's the correlation between this present moment and this past story is makes the book even more, I think, I don't want to say this about my own book, but for me, it makes even a more painful wound. But I think it's something that people need to know, and that you need to know also through individual stories, right? Because
I'm so glad. I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm so glad that you brought up the whole Dominican Republic thing, because I've only been to DR one time. It was in 2010, after the earthquake. And I actually tried to, long story, we were supposed to go to Brazil. Somebody stole our money, so that's how we ended up in DR. It was quick, it was cheap, it was whatever. I was so bothered by the way that the Haitians were treated that I will never set foot there again. I am a frustrated writer. I'm a wannabe writer, and I was so bothered by it. I wrote a blog about it when I came back, and took pictures of Haitians working in the fields, and it just took me. If you didn't know, you would think it was straight up slavery. I mean, it was Haitian men in bib overalls in a wagon drawn by mules. It was just like, you got to be kidding me. I was just livid. But what bothers me, which I told Narline, I have Haitian friends who go to DR for vacation. I would never, and I am not Haitian. So please, and I'm not asking, I'm just saying rhetorically, I do not understand that. And we teach people how to treat us. And when I say that, people look at us and they see us as one. So when I'm in DR, I'm feeling, the Haitian are my people. And if you're treating them that way, but for you, how do you know I'm not Haitian, right? So I mean, and it just blew my mind that that was happening. And since then, now you've got this whole deportation, and they're going back to 1929. If you can't prove that you were Haitian, if you weren't born there, but are you kidding me? So when we see what's happening here, and thank you for saying that. If you think it can't happen, you're crazy. It happens, and it can very much happen here to even Black Americans. We don't know how far the imagination will stretch with these people.
Oh, no, I mean, I think there was, even before this current moment, there was a case, and I think folks can look it up, of Secret Service agents who were Black, I think during the Obama era, who went to clubs and were thrown out there because they, so I think people have to, you have to think about aligning, I think something we have to relearn sometimes, aligning your money with your values, right? Like, just like Edward was talking about Citibank. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You
There
have
are-
been so gracious to spend this time with us. And I do know that you have other things to do, and I don't want to abuse
No, I
your
know I said I'll stay till 6. I have family dinner. So, that's like starts soon. Someone is cooking for me in my place today, but but I do have to
time.
go at 6.
It's a shame you're so far away because I would Bogart. But anyway, Narline, you had wanted to ask something, I think.
Yes. So one of the and I started reading that this book also, but when I saw the title, the first thing that came to me is it's the dew breaker, right? And the first thing that came to mind when I read the title of this book was Gouverneur de la Rosée by Jacques Roumain, which is a book I read and had such an impact on me growing up. And I did write a book report on it. So I wanted to know if the title that you chose for your book, The Dew Breaker, has anything to do with the title of Gouverneur de la Rosée, which in English I believe is translated to the Dew
Masters of the Dew. Yeah.
Masters of the Dew. So I wanted to know if there was any correlation between why you chose that title, if it's an inspiration by Jacques Roumain's book, and also if you can if that is the case, if you can elaborate more on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the Masters of the Dew, Gouverneur de la Rosée, is one of these examples of what Dr. Manago was talking about in terms of bridging these gaps between Haitians and African Americans. And so Langston Hughes, who translated the English version with Mercer Cook, and so Michael Dash writes a very long introduction to it. So it's one of the Gouverneur de la Rosée, Masters of the Dew, is one of the iconic Haitian novels. It's kind of like a novel that every child gets taught as a Haitian, and it starts in this. It literally starts with an old woman who puts her hand in a dust that's drying, like a farming family, and says, we're all going to die because there's a drought. And then her son comes, who has been in Cuba cutting sugarcane, returns to the village and Jacques Roumain was a Marxist, and just comes with this vision of reuniting the village. And there's this feud between the families that's been keeping them from building a canal. And it's very interesting because this past couple of years, the Haitians on the border between the Haiti and the Dominican Republic have built a canal that the Dominicans protested. They closed the border about, but there was a drought, and they felt like, like people got together and says, we have to irrigate the land because we're farmers. We built this canal. So it had this parallel. Sometimes literature is prophetic in that way. So, but the lesson of that is that we can all come together. And one of the quotes from that so we have a system in Haiti called Combit. And then the novel tells us, and it's true, like today, the Combit is basically, today you work my land, tomorrow I work yours. So it's a group of people get together. So if it's my turn, if it's your turn, and that's how people got together without help from the state and things like lacus, which are like these communities. Like, so if your land needs to be plowed today, everybody comes in the community, the women cook, the men work your land, and then tomorrow's your turn, then that same group comes to your land. And the novel is really framed around all that. So yes, it was definitely an inspiration. As with, there's another novel by Jacques-Stéphane Alexis, who was also a Marxist,
Yeah.
but who was killed during the dictatorship, coming back to Haiti to stage opposition to the dictatorship. And his is Général Compère Soleil, which is it's also about the massacre. And so, yeah, the Gouverneur de la Rosée was very, and I wanted to, so he gives us, Jacques Womack gives us this beautiful, with Langston Hughes translation, a lot of you can read it, and I think you'll enjoy it, gives us this notion of like how to build community. And it's this returnee, like what we would call now a diaspora, who is trying to reunite the community. Whereas the dew breaker, the Creole for dew breaker is chouquette la rosée, is someone who shakes the dew. Because the way the dictators, henchmen, the Totomaku would come for people, they would come at dawn while people were sleeping. And because they were, there was that dew, if you've been in any like setting like that, there's dew on the leaves. And they would stomp the dew, so they were called chouquette la rosée, those who shake the dew. So you have like in this beautiful novel, Gouverneur de la Rosée, masters of the dew, people who control the dew for a positive. And then we end up within the dictatorship with people like Chouquette la Rosée, shakers of the dew, who are destroyers. And so my book was about this man who was one of those people. He like redeems himself. But definitely I was thinking of that as a kind of ascent, right? Like what we've lost and going from people who, and we still have those people in the community. We still have those masters of the dews, like, well, mistresses of the dews or people of the dew who are trying to build community. But more and more we have more dew breakers than these other kinds of people.
Thank you. Let's see, chat, if there is, I do think we may have more, are there any more questions in the chat? Did you see any, Helen? Oh, there is a question. It's by C, I believe. And the question is going back to your first book. How did you find an editor for your first book?
Okay, so after I wrote that article and New Youth Connections, then I entered a contest for 17 magazine, and I didn't win. So I tried to get my story out there, and then I sent it to Laura Ruska at Soho Press. I remember, I don't know if some of you who write, there used to be this really massive book called Writer's Market, where they would list publications. And I went through and I saw Soho Press. You didn't have to have an agent. And I had maybe 150 pages. I sent to Laura Ruska at Soho Press. And years later, she would tell me that we started out talking about my name. So she said she was trying to figure out how to address my rejection letter because she couldn't tell whether I was a man or a woman. So she said she started reading she was going to reject it, but she started reading and then got into it. And so by then I had, and then she wrote me and she said, do you have the rest of it? I didn't. So I feverishly tried to finish. And then when I sent it, she said, well, it's not ready, but send it to me when you're revised it. And so that actually made me decide to do an MFA because I'm a child of immigrants. Like I needed to, I actually told my parents I was going to Brown to be a teacher, to learn how to be a teacher. Because if I told them I was learning to be a writer, they would have thought I was out of my mind.
Oh, you wanted to be a nurse.
Yeah, no, but they were like, nurse. I was like, no, actually, I used to volunteer at Kings County as part of my training at Clara Barton. Like when I left Clara Barton, I could have been a CNA. At that time, everyone who left high school, that particular high school, you had a certificate where you could actually work in people's homes, taking care of people's home as a CNA. So I was kind of trained in baseline medical things, but I would volunteer at Kings County, and I just was extraordinarily depressed because I was in geriatrics and people would die like between, and I was like, I can't, this could not be my life. So my parents then accepted that, okay, you can, that maybe that's not for you, because you would just be, I would be crying all the time as a nurse. And so that's when I decided, after Laura, that encouragement, I decided, okay, maybe I can do this MFA, and if it doesn't work, you know, that was a really good push to encourage me in that direction.
Did your parents live to see your
Yes.
success? Mhm.
And one of the things, you know, I mean, my parents came with me to the National Book Awards. And I remember when Crick Crack, my second book, was nominated, and they were like, they just couldn't believe that I was in this space. Because my whole life too, I came to Manhattan to go to Barnard. My life was in Brooklyn, was in this very Caribbean part of Brooklyn. So for them, it was such a different kind of situation. But again, the story that goes back to Taliban and Kuru, I remember after my dad passed away, I'm forgetting the name of that wonderful woman who was there. Brenda, maybe you know. Oh, you're muted. Oh.
Mrs. Miller, Leothi Miller.
Yes. And so I remember going back to the store after my dad passed away, and she told me, she said, you know, I didn't know this until she told me that my dad was a cab driver in Brooklyn. And she said, you know, your dad used to come in here all the time to buy your books to give to people in his cab. And I didn't know that. And my parents were not the kind of people who would be like, I love you, I'm so proud of you. But my mom, when she was, and I write about this in a little book I wrote called The Art of Death, and my mom, you know, when she was getting cancer treatment, she would, you know, my dad had done this with Nkuru, and my mom used to say, bring the doctor your book, bring them, so they could, and she saw it as a way to be like, you know, so they could know who you are, so that, and by extension, who I am, like, so I think if anything, I saw that as, I know they were proud of me. They were not the kind of people who would ever say it, but in those moments, I realized that also it was moving for me to see that they appreciated that, like they saw that, like the value of also what I do.
But you had already answered, because you said they didn't let you get full of yourself when you were on Oprah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's very helpful, because there was a way that, I mean, what I was saying about like sort of the vessel part of this work. And again, it's like the antidote to being alone. I don't think, and I think that's in our tradition. I think as people of the African diaspora, like that the work we do is, it's not ours alone. It's not singular in that way. It's community work, right? And it's part of a tradition. It comes from a lineage. We're doing it for others who will come after us. So I think in a way that my parents' attitude too about like don't take yourself too seriously, because it's really not like, you're not doing this by yourself, and you're not doing this just for yourself.
Oops. I applaud and appreciate your parents' perspective. Anyway, it is that bewitching hour, and I am going to ask my co-hosts if they have any final words they want to say before we let you go.
My final words are thank you. I am so happy and blessed to have been able to sift through your work. I will be reading all of it. I can tell you that now. And I love that not only does it take me back to growing up in Haiti, but also gives a history of Haiti. And I think your work does do that for people who want to know more about Haiti in a digestible way. So it's not, they are not like big history books, but there's so much information in there. So I want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for speaking to us and giving us your perspective. I've asked Helen to connect me to you if that's okay. And I look forward
for a slight fee.
I look forward to reading more of your work, seeing what you do in the future, and I hope that you would be willing to come back and speak to us here when When Black Women Gather. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, definitely. Oh, go ahead.
Well, continue. I'm sorry, continue.
Oh, no, I was there. I'll say it after you're well done.
Okay. I was in Tampa or Orlando. I forgot which place it was, but I was taking an Uber, and it was a Haitian woman who was driving the Uber, and I could tell she was Haitian by her name. And she was just driving the Ubers, she wasn't really doing anything. And I said, "It's good to be in a Uber with royalty." And she said, she said, "What?" I said, "You're Haitian, right?" "Yeah." I said, "You're royalty to me. You have royal blood, and you come from a legacy of amazing power, and I'm in awe." And she didn't have that perspective of herself.
Wow.
I stayed consistent. I said, there's distractions that get in the way of us learning our history. But I said, I know your history. It's amazing, and I'm honored to be in your Uber. And she was moved but confused. I tell that story because I feel the same way about you. But I think you can handle it better than she.
Just a little bit more.
It's also what gets in the way of us coming together as one, as Black people.
Yeah.
And it's not by accident, people. It is by design. And if ever there's been a time that we have to overlook all of that and come to it, is now. So, if you see something happening to a Haitian person, a Jamaican person, a Black American, put yourself in those shoes and just know that it could be you. So we have got to band together right now.
But thank you, Edwidge. And I will be diving into your book.
Edwidge.
There you go. You're good.
I will be diving into your books and taking that journey through your brilliance. And I look forward to it. It's wonderful meeting you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to meet all of you, and thank you for taking the time to have this conversation. I will be back.
Thank you.
It was really what I think. We're going to. I mean, it's so important to. It's going to be so important to gather, to turn to one another, in this period of time, and I think I'm thinking of. I was here last for Sister Sonia, and also thinking in this framing of our elders, right? Especially those like Sister Sonia and like Nikki Giovanni who are still with us.
We've had her here too.
Yeah, and I also want, in terms of speaking of ancestors, I want to call out the name of Elizabeth Nunez, who passed away recently, and her service was this week. And so I want you all to think about her also as we say goodbye. And thank you again for having
Before we say goodbye, could you all please unmute and show our sister some love?
Woo, woo, woo.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank
Merci
you.
beaucoup.
Merci, Apil. I'll see you all soon.
Before you go, so for those of you who know, when Black women gather,
Amazing things
Things
happen.
happen.
Thank you so much for another amazing afternoon, and I will please hang online for I'm going to stop recording, but hang online so I can tell you what I got for you next. And thank you so much, Edwidge.
Yes, thank
I'm working
you.
on it.
Thank you.
And I look forward to having you again.
All right,
Enjoy your
thank
dinner.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Enjoy your
Thank
dinner.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.